It is episode number 15 of the SEC Football Hour. Chase Robinson here, got Chris Lee alongside as we're going to spend the next little bit talking our favorite topic, that is SEC football. Tyler McComas, he is the host of The Rush on the Ref out in Oklahoma. He's going to join us as we will chat some Oklahoma football as we get ready for that big game between the Sooners and the Tennessee Vols coming up this Saturday. Lots of good games as we move through September here in SEC football. Let's start with, Chris, some things we learned from this past weekend across the SEC. What's something you learned, Chris, watching games Saturday?
Well, I don't know that I learned this from watching games as much, although some of it comes from watching games. But I like my computer rankings, just seeing what everybody's saying. You add up all the stats and what's it say. And what it says is the SEC is an absolutely dominating conference. I've got the power rankings that I keep. That's a synthesis of 5 mainstream sources that are pretty good. Here is your top in points above average, and listen to both the SEC dominance and how close this is. Alabama number 1 in the computers this week. 28.4 points above average, followed by Texas at 28.1, Ohio State at 27.3, Georgia at 26.2, Tennessee at 24.7, Ole Miss also at that same number. Chase, 5 of the 6 teams in college football, according to computers, and I think the polls too, have the SEC in the top 6, 5 of the 6. You go down a little further, Missouri is at 11, and just the depth of the league too. Oklahoma 13, A&M 17, LSU 20, Auburn 23, South Carolina 29, Arkansas 32, Kentucky 35, and we go down until we get to, I think, Vanderbilt and Mississippi State in the 70s. But just not only a top-heavy league, but you just don't get, I mean, it's relatively a pass out week in and week out when you're playing South Carolina instead of Tennessee. But is it really? No, it's not. Even Florida's still at 45 with its struggles. It just, the dominance of the conference. And look, it's had its moments where things didn't go so well. We know about Texas A&M and Notre Dame. But on the whole, the computer analytics guys are loving this league from top to bottom. And especially at the top, we've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, the SEC is the best. I mean, there's no other way around that. Here's something I learned, kind of team specific about the Auburn Tigers. I feel like they fixed their quarterback problem, their turnover problem, by putting Hank Brown in, the redshirt freshman. I thought he looked really good Saturday. They were playing New Mexico, so we'll find out more about him. And I'm interested to see if he can be consistent with the level of play that he had Saturday against New Mexico when they get into the SEC schedule and this week against Arkansas. But I feel like they have fixed their turnover problem, their interception problem, by taking Peyton Thorne out, by starting Hank Brown. When we did this show last week, we weren't sure what the quarterback situation was going to be like. I was told last week that Hank Brown was going to get a lot of playing time. But we didn't find out till late Friday that Hank Brown was going to be the starter for the Auburn Tigers. I thought that was a great decision by Hugh Freeze. He said he made the decision last Monday. He didn't tell the guys until Thursday. He had to sleep on it for a few days. That was a tough decision for him to make. But I thought it was a great decision for Hugh Freeze to go with Hank Brown.
Chase, I'm not as sold yet that fixed the problem. Hank Brown is pretty inexperienced. He's a second-year guy, was kind of an under-the-radar recruit. He's from my neck of the woods in the Nashville area, played at Lipscomb Academy under Trent Dilfer. I need to see it against somebody other than New Mexico. That's maybe the worst defense in the FBS, but I'll at least go as far as say it felt like a step in a better direction. Is that fair?
Yeah, I agree with that. And yes, there is a lot more to learn about Hank Brown even this week against Arkansas, because I think their defense can cause some problems too. But yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. Speaking of problems, I got a problem to bring up. But first, I think it's time to remind folks who makes this possible.
That's right. That is BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. If you think you know your stuff, you can get in on a $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, you can go to the online casino, get in a game of blackjack or poker or one of the over 150 slots games. So head over to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here.
Okay, probably not hard to guess where I'm going next. It's Florida. And it feels like everybody has said, hey, a change is not imminent with Billy Napier, but reports are that boosters have rallied to raise the money. Scott Strickland, not the most popular athletic director down there. Don't know how that affects things, but I think the way that Florida looked, you got people leaving in the third quarter, and that was a downpour. I don't really blame them. Yeah, they couldn't play a PSA on drunk driving because Billy Napier's involved in the ad. It's gotten to a place where it's gotten toxic in Florida. Again, we pointed out the schedule is going to make it difficult, but and I have some sympathy for that, but it just doesn't look anything like Florida football. This team has now lost 4 in a row at home. I don't know when it happens. I don't know how it happens, but it feels like the Billy Napier area in Florida, the Billy Napier era in Gainesville is on its last legs.
Oh, for sure. And, and he's even been asked just, about how the fans feel and what they're seeing. And as he says, he doesn't blame them. This is
Yeah.
not going like he thought it would, like anyone thought it would. And I know that's frustrating. That's got to be hard. But yeah, the wheels are coming off in Gainesville. And, I feel like it's just a matter of time before a decision is made. I don't know when that'll come, but yeah, it's going to be a long few months in Gainesville, Florida.
Yeah. What's your next thing we've learned?
Yeah, so I talked about Auburn's quarterback a second ago. I feel like we're in a situation with Texas A&M that they do have. I learned that they have some depth at quarterback. Marcel Reed. I was impressed with him. He came in and I thought he played well against Florida. We were just talking about Florida, how the wheels are coming off, and so I don't know if we can judge a performance against Florida as, hey, this is it. But I like the way he played. They do have depth at quarterback, and I think to find someone that can get something going for A&M, that can get them a good momentum heading into the rest of the way is kind of what they need, and maybe Reed's that guy.
Yeah, and hey, look at the situation. I mean, in spite of where things are in Florida, it's still not an awful football team.
Right.
You're still top 50 in the country. You're playing in the swamp, in the rain. You got a rain delay. You lead a drive that goes 99 yards back. I mean, there's so many ways that could go wrong, right? You could fumble a snap. The ball could slip out of your hand. Marcel Reed took care of business against Florida, and I think that's going to maybe count for something going forward.
Yeah, it very well could. So we'll see what happens there. Chris, what else did you learn?
Well, I think this is a generality, but I feel like the path forward at Vanderbilt and Mississippi State has gotten more difficult for both. Vanderbilt really needed to win against Georgia State. And Diego Pavia leads them on touchdown drive. They're down. He gets 2 touchdown drives in the last 3 minutes. Feels like they pulled one out of the fire. Defense allows a late score to Georgia State. This was a game that Vanderbilt had to win, I think, to get bowl eligible now. You've got to find 3 SEC wins at some point, assuming you beat Ball State. It's year 4 for Clark Lee. Doesn't look like it's going to end in a bowl season. So I don't know how you sell that going forward. In Mississippi State, I'm not going to bury Jeff Lebby after 3 games. That's not what I'm trying to do. But we've underscored the difficulty of the situation. I think the various NIL happenings around the country have probably made that path more difficult for programs like Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. Looks like NIL is probably going to be an ongoing part of things. Vanderbilt's got an affluent fan base, but how much is it going to invest in football without results? Mississippi State, probably if you're handicapping the fan bases that are not equipped to handle NIL, just in terms of the money available, I would think that would be at the top of the list. Just a tough spot for both those schools. It'll be interesting to see how either coach or program kind of digs themselves out of the ditch they're in, but however they do it, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it's not. That is for sure about that. So those are some things we learned It's time to jump into our SEC fantasy football. If this is the first episode you're catching the SEC football hour, Chris and I have a little fantasy football competition we're going through as we have picked a team of SEC players. We had our draft the week before the season, and we're keeping up with that. So here we go, Chris. Take us through our fantasy football for this week. As look, Jalen Milroe, my quarterback, accounted for
Oh
5
boy.
touchdowns, had a great day, and I needed that. I needed him to have a good day here for my fantasy team.
I feel like, Chase, you've caught some tough breaks. Milroe has carried your team, but you've had some stuff happen. You had Jordan Watkins didn't play week 1. We didn't know that was going on. And then the games where a team is just going to slaughter someone else. And clearly that was going to be Tennessee with Kent State. The thing is there's going to be a lot of points to go around. And boy, there were points to go around on that game. But you don't always know where they're going to go. You got bitten pretty badly by Brew McCoy. Now, Jarquez Hunter, I think we called that should have been a Jarquez Hunter special, and it was. But Justice Haynes, I guess the victim in a little bit of a timeshare. And then on the other side, speaking of teams putting up points, Caden Priestcorn was kind of the odd man out. So, you got a great start with Milroe in the morning, but boy, the rest of your team, other than maybe the Texas defense and Hunter, just a bitter disappointment. I felt a little bad for you there.
Yeah, yeah, it was not good. My team, we got some work to do this week. I'm going to be thinking of some changes to be made because I think I'm going to have to keep up with you, Chris.
Yeah, well, I made some moves, and one of them certainly paid off last week. Although we've got some maybe issues of what I could have done instead. But I mean, it's kind of a recurring theme for me too. Jackson Dart was just terrific once again. I guess the only thing is he could have thrown for more touchdowns. Jaquindon Jackson, a very solid effort, which I figured would happen. Dylan Sampson, hey, I got the good end of that Tennessee thing. Sampson got 4 touchdowns, ran for 147 yards. That could have easily been a matchup where they said, hey, he's our marquee back. We're going to just beat the living crap out of Kent State. Let's take our main guy out of there. They didn't do that. So I caught a break where you didn't. I did beat you. I'll tell you that. But I'm acknowledging that there was one huge swing there in that Tennessee game where my guy got some reps and your guy didn't. Trey Harris kind of had an off day for Trey Harris. Luther Burden still really hasn't done big Luther Burden things yet. And Luke Haas got shut out, I think. So I didn't see that one coming. May need to ponder a change at tight end. And then Georgia's defense was very Georgia-like against Kentucky in that 13-12 win. I did get 123.5, beat you by about 30 points this week. But again, I acknowledged that some of that was sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And I feel like I got a little lucky in this one.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm gonna have to figure some things out here with my team and get some guys producing here. But yeah, so this is our SEC fantasy football, and again, Chris, once again, beating me. I think he's beaten me all 3 weeks that we've been doing this. Solid team though, Chris. You got Jackson Dart leading the way. Jackson and Sampson both have been big, and I think both of these guys will have big games again this week. They're set up to at least.
Yeah, sometimes fantasy football is about picking an offense you believe in, and I've certainly done that with Tennessee and with Ole Miss. I've got Nico as my backup in case Jackson Dart falters. I don't see that coming, but that was like a defensive pick to keep you from getting him, and I'm kind of glad I made that. Although I don't know that you're taking Jalen Milroe out of your lineup either.
No, I'm not. As long as Jalen Milroe is getting me the points he did this week, I will definitely take it there. So that's some fun there with our SEC fantasy football.
Chase, going into next week, I feel like I'm going to need some clarity. By the way, you're going to need some clarity too because you got Jalen Milroe off. You're going to have to find another quarterback. So, as for me, I've got to decide: am I going to put Trevor Etienne? Well, I won't put Etienne because he's off. Do I play Henry Parrish next week because he's been lighting it up? Do I bench Jaquindon Jackson? Now, Parrish has got one of those matchups where he could sit. Do I run Dylan Sampson out there against Oklahoma? I don't know. That's a stingier defense. But you know what I need when I need clarity? I need MagicMind. And you can see by the look of this empty bottle, I've been pounding these things. The nice folks at MagicMind reach out to me this summer asked me to sample their product. It is designed to help with clarity. Guess what it has? It is a mental performance shot that keeps you clear and motivated and reduces stress. It has helped me gain a clear head and a much needed focus through some stressful and hectic days this spring and summer. It is not a coffee replacement because there are no quick fixes, Chase, but it is an addition to your morning routine with time release caffeine. If you like the scientific explanation for why it works, here it is. Completely safe with 12 natural ingredients to support your body's energy engine, mushroom nootropics and adaptogens, plus over 100% of your daily vitamin C and D in every bottle. Doctor validated with over 200 scientific studies behind every ingredient. Magic Mind donates a nickel of every bottle sold to mental health charities that help U.S. homeless communities. So confident is Magic Mind that it can help you. It will refund your money 100%, no questions asked. If you don't like it, check out the link in the description of this episode. You can get 48% off a subscription or 20% off a one-time purchase with the code Southeastern20. So help the folks out who help out our show and get Magic Mind where flow state awaits you.
Well, we're going to talk about a fun matchup now, Chris, that we will need some clarity for as we get ready for this Oklahoma-Tennessee game in Norman. Should be a fantastic game. Great atmosphere. And Tyler McComas is going to join us now to break down this big matchup between the Sooners and the Vols. We had a chance to catch up with him earlier today to get his thoughts on this matchup. We're going to talk some Oklahoma football now. Tyler McComas joining us. He is with the Ref out in Oklahoma covering the Sooners. And, boy, it's going to be a fun weekend. Tennessee comes to Norman. Tyler, appreciate you coming on and talking some Oklahoma football with us today.
Yeah, anytime. I mean, it's about as big of a game as it can get around here. Easily the biggest home game in over a decade. And we're having conversations about the biggest home game since maybe the year 2000.
So what's just the first few games of the season under the belt? What's kind of the vibe for the fan base around the Oklahoma football program right now?
There's been a lot of anger thus far, to be quite honest with you. I think I told you before the year that I thought this defense was going to be really good, and so far that's been the case. I mean, without a good defense, you 2-1, maybe even 1-2 with losses to Houston and Tulane. The defense has been as advertised. They take the ball away. They get TFLs. I mean, they're really good on that side. The offense has been the issue, and the offensive side of the ball kind of was my question mark heading into the year. More specifically, the offensive line, and they've just been beat up, dude. I mean, you had Jaden Gibson, who I thought was going to be wide receiver number 3, out before the year even started. Jalil Farouk started game 1, and he got hurt on the first pass that he caught this entire season. Nick Anderson, at worst, wide receiver number 2 this year, and he hasn't played it down yet. We'll see if he plays on Saturday or not. But the offensive line has just been – they've been beat up as well. They haven't had the same lineup so far this year. I don't think that they'll have the same lineup again on Saturday. There's been a lot of shuffling on the offensive line. They haven't been able to run the ball. They haven't been able to hit on big plays. Your young quarterback has made some mistakes at times, a little bit too hesitant. But how much can you really put on him when you have the offensive line, run game, wide receiver issues that you have? It's just been kind of a mess offensively, man. And it's one thing to be an offense that doesn't score a lot of points and get a lot of yards. It's another thing to be an offense that really puts your defense in a bad spot. And they've been an offense, certainly against Houston, where they put the better side of the ball in a bad spot. They were better last week against Tulane. I mean, they were. I mean, it was better. It wasn't good. It wasn't great. It was better. So we'll see if they can make strides from week 3 to week 4. But it's been the offense thus far that's been holding this team back, and a lot of people are frustrated by it.
Yeah, and understandably so. I mean, again, like you mentioned, this is not what people thought this offense would be. As far as Jackson Arnold goes, your thoughts on him, what you've seen just starting a year from that position for a guy who, like you mentioned, I mean, he doesn't have all the receivers that he thought he would. The offensive line is having to be restructured because of injury. That quarterback position specifically, your thoughts?
So I thought his best skill set coming into the year was, hey, man, this dude's a gunslinger. And I think he's really good at stretching the field. I think he's good at attacking secondaries down the field with his arm. He's got all the arm talent that you want. He's got accuracy. I mean, he's just a natural thrower of the football, right? Like one of those guys, a 5-star for a reason. Well, the situation around him hasn't really been there for him to showcase his best skill set. You know what I mean? Like the receivers haven't been getting separation. The offensive line can't block long enough for things to develop down the field. I mean, just you've put him in a situation, and I'm not saying that he's been perfect. I mean, he had a very costly pick six last week that got Tulane back to a one-score game. But this offense has not put him in a situation to be at his best, and I think that that's problematic. Now, the positive side is he throws the pick six last week. Tulane's back within 5, I think, I believe, in the fourth quarter. And he came back after that play and played some really good football. And he played some really good football by making some plays with his feet. So he's going to have to be that moving forward. He's going to have to be the dual threat quarterback that we all thought that he was going to be. So maybe that's a defining moment, right? You know, going into this weekend's game and for the rest of the year, maybe it was, hey, he had that big mistake, but then he came back after that and played some pretty good football. I think that that's kind of what you're holding on to right now. Around here, Jackson Arnold has got a lot of the blame, maybe the majority of the blame. I do think some of that's fair. I do think some of that's warranted because he's been a little bit too hesitant at times, maybe holding on to the ball a little bit too long and not making decisions fast enough. But again, the situation around him for a first-year starter has not been great, and they've got to be better around him for him to really thrive against some of these SEC defenses.
Hey, Tyler, thanks for joining us. Sorry I'm hopping in late here, but questions about the injury. I mean, the offensive line has been wrecked. The receiver room has had all kinds of injuries. I think you started to see some things on defense last week. Who's out, who's questionable, and for the guys that are out, what moves do they make on the depth chart? Who gets playing time? Who do we see more against Tennessee if some of the bigger guys are out?
Well, they've been playing like their fourth string center for the past couple of weeks, which is not ideal. Most fans don't know who like the fourth string center is on the team, right? But yeah. I do think, or at least here's the hope. And we're talking on a Wednesday morning here, and that first injury report's going to come out for OU since it's a conference game. Now, we've never seen this before. Do I expect Brent Venables to say Nick Anderson will play or Troy Everett, Branson Hickman will play? I would guess questionable is probably the injury designation for these things. But the feeling is good that you could get some pieces back. Branson Hickman, your starting center, who had a high ankle sprain in like the first quarter of the first game this year. Like it would be huge to get him back at center. Yeah. There's a hope and maybe even an expectation that he's back. Troy Everett, who's a guy that can play one of those guard spots for you, hadn't played it down yet this year. There's a hope and an expectation that he can be back. Nick Anderson, again, at worst, was going to be wide receiver number 2 this year. There's a hope that he can be back for the first time this year as well. And not just getting those guys back, but what it can do for other players around them. Like Deion Burks, guys, he's really good. Really good. But the problem is that he's really been the only wide receiver that you can trust at this point. Well, so what does the defense do? The defense goes into a game against OU and says, well, whatever happens, we're not going to let Six beat us. Like, we're going to make sure we account for him every single snap. He's going to get his from time to time, but we're not going to let that guy get loose and beat us down the field. So it's been hard to get him free and open down the field because he's just been such a focal point for the other defenses because you don't really have any other answers in the passing game outside Deion Burks. Getting Nick Anderson back, who is a very good receiver, getting him back this week maybe frees up a guy like Deion Burks a little bit more. So it feels like this week there's a chance they could be as healthy as they've been the entire year. And, guys, that's going to have to be the case against a Tennessee team that's got a ton of momentum right now,
Tyler, it's not really funny. I'm not wishing injury on anybody, but I thought the situation was sort of summed up. I was reading the transcript of one of their press conferences last week, and whoever was playing center, I forgot, it was their third guy, talked about he didn't have the full use of one arm. Like, wow, that's a bad spot to be in when your center is kind of playing with one arm. But that's just kind of been the state of things. I thought, number one, I was watching the Temple game. I thought the minute Hickman went out, everything changed with that offense. They looked pretty good early. Yeah. I mean, it's been a different ball game ever since. And number two, I thought we'd get big things out of Gavin Sawchuk, and it just hasn't happened. There's been talk of injury. What's going on with that one?
I don't think the Sawchuk is injured. He did get the first carries. He did get the start again last week against Tulane, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, Javonte Barnes looks like a better back right now. Your true freshman, Taylor Tatum, though you can't really trust him in pass protection at this point, which is an issue, looks like the better back as well. I mean, Chris, it's a fantastic question because Sawchuk, I believe it was 5 consecutive games last year to end the season where he had 100 or more yards. Like, we were operating going into this offseason like, okay, well, you need more than Sawchuk, but Sawchuk's your dude. Who's the other back that goes along with him? Is it Barnes? Is it Tatum? Is it Sam Franklin from the portal? And Sawchuk, I mean, does he have a run over 10 yards this year? I don't know. I don't know if he does. He just doesn't have the pop. He just doesn't have the big play potential that maybe he had last year. I don't think the offensive line situation around him has helped him. And I think that he is a guy that needs to operate with some space. But maybe Gavin Sawchuk gets to start again this week. Maybe. But I think all of us around here are moving forward that, look, he's your third best back at this point. And he may get the first carries of a game to try to get him going. We'll see. But at the most critical parts of this game, I'd be very surprised if it's not Javonte Barnes or the true freshman Taylor Tatum. They're in the game. But, yeah, I mean, we're all asking the same thing. Like, what's going on with Sawchuk? What's the reason here? I don't think it's injury. I just think he's maybe having the most difficult time behind that offensive line because at least Javonte Barnes, if nothing else, he'll just try to run right through someone. There's not a hole to run through. Like, he'll try to make his own hole, essentially, run straight ahead. Taylor Tatum's maybe got more big play potential, but, yeah, Gavin Sawchuk, and I think the running backs just kind of as a whole have been a bit disappointing up to this spot.
You mentioned Tennessee, a lot of momentum coming into this game. And we talked about the defense for Oklahoma at the start. They're kind of as we thought they would be. It's a very solid defense. A lot of weapons for Tennessee. How do you see that matchup going with this Oklahoma defense facing what's coming in with Tennessee on Saturday?
Again, yeah, I think this OU defense is good. I mean, is it the best defense in the SEC? Like, I'm not ready to go there right now, but I think it's a good defense, and I think that given the right situation, and it always comes back to the offense with this team, but if the offense can possess the ball a little bit, pick up some third downs, don't get crushed in time of possession, then I think that this defense can hold their own and be fine and play well enough to win. It's a defense that, man, they come away with some takeaways. It's a defense that just had the Bronco Nagurski National Player of the Week in R. Mason Thomas coming off the edge. It's a defense that's good on the interior, good at linebacker, good at corner, good at safety. I mean, there's no real holes for this defense. And look, looking at this game in the offseason, I know the games have been a lot closer than we thought. This was supposed to be the first big game of the year. It's your first SEC game. I have no doubt that Brent Venables is going to show some looks, show some fronts, show some personnel groupings that OU hasn't put on tape just yet. Like, I adamantly believe that they've saved some stuff for this game to try to really confuse young Nico in his first true road start. So, I mean, if I'm looking at reasons why OU can win this game, I start with the defense. Because as good as Nico is, and nobody can deny the natural skill talent that he has. I mean, that kid, he's special, and he's got a chance to be one of the best Tennessee quarterbacks ever, just the natural skill set. But he hasn't been in a road environment like this before. I think that that's fair to say. And he hasn't faced adversity so far in his career during a game. How does he respond to that? Well, we'll see. We'll find out. Maybe he's excellent in adversity. Like, that can be true. But I do think this OU defense is going to put that Tennessee offense and Nico in some adverse type of situations. And we'll see how they respond from that. But again, going all the way back to the offense, the defense can only do so much in this game. Because the time of possession against Houston was awful. Guys, it's one thing to be an offense that's not scoring points. It's one thing to be an offense that's not getting a lot of yards or big plays. This offense cannot put their defense in bad situations. And it put its defense in bad situations in the Houston game. It was better last week against Tulane. They won the time of possession battle. That's a really good start. But I can sit here and tell you why the OU defense can keep OU in the football game. But they can't do that unless the offense plays some efficient football and picks up some critical third downs, because this is just it's not a big play offense. And I don't think that that's going to change this week. This is going to have to be a different approach than what OU has done for the past several years. It's going to have to be an offense that maybe can take some chances down the field, but more times than not, it's going to have to win the time of possession battle and not put their defense on the field for 38, 40 minutes of the football game.
Yeah, I agree with that. They're going to have to take a step up offensively, which is going to be hard to do against the Tennessee defense based on what we've seen. Now, they haven't played a bunch of world beaters either. Not that Oklahoma's played them either every week. But here's the thing I fall back on. Their run defense has been really good up front. And I think you looked at their back seven coming into the year, and I compared them against every back seven in the league, and maybe other than Georgia. I thought they had as much there as anybody. And it's not just Billy Bowman and it's not just Danny Stutzman, but they have so many guys that have just made plays in college football and very experienced. I don't know that anybody's got, just the volume that Kendall Dolby, Gentry Williams, Woody Washington, guys like that. I feel like one of Tennessee's strengths is they will put a bunch of receivers on the field, spread the field. They got a running back who can catch the ball. I feel like that's where, if Oklahoma wins the game, it's that matchup and having enough guys on that back seven who can cover that might be the difference.
You're right. Like I made the claim this offseason that I think there's a chance that OU could have the better defense in every single SEC game it plays this year. Now, Alabama would be the pushback to that. They don't play Georgia, but it's not just the starting 11 is why I said that. It's kind of what you're saying, the overall depth that they have, like the next 11 really at every single spot. Now, Billy Bowman's good, but Robert Spears-Jennings has been arguably their best player on defense up to this point. He's special. Peyton Bowen, the former five-star, is good. And, they haven't even necessarily played with the full deck defensively up to this point. You mentioned Woody Washington and Gentry Williams. Gentry Williams is banged up once again this year. We'll see when he's back, if he's back. Woody Washington was out for the first game, so they didn't even start those first two guys at corner. And I know that was against Temple, but – you're getting really good production out of a couple of guys at corner that you didn't necessarily think that were going to start at the beginning of the season. The one missing piece for this defense, and this is my biggest question mark going into the year, it's like, look, they're good in the back end. They got depth. They're awesome at backer. I think they're going to be good in the interior with Dominic Williams, the TCU transfer. Jaden Jackson, the true freshman, is really playing well thus far. Can they get consistent pass rush? Who's going to be that guy off the edge? Because for as well as Oklahoma even played last year defensively in some spots, they didn't have that consistent pass rusher. So who's that going to be? Well, we kept talking about R. Mason Thomas, but he kept getting injured the past couple of years, and last week was the best game of his career. Last week is the game we've been waiting on. Again, Bronco Nagurski, National Player of the Week. That's pretty big time, and he took over that game late. So if that's what we get moving forward, performances like that from the edge rushers, the defensive ends, a guy like R. Mason Thomas, this defense has everything you need. And it has everything you need to be very, very competitive in this game. But I would still say, like, pass rushing, even though Tennessee will get the ball out quick, and I know it's tough to get to Nico at times, but if they get a consistent pass rush, then I think that they can do some nice things on Saturday.
College game day coming to town. It's a night primetime game on ABC for this one. As far as the fans go, the atmosphere, what that stadium will be like there in Norma. Take us through kind of what Saturday is going to look like for the Oklahoma fans.
I expect this to be, in the past 25 years, let's go back to Bob Stoops' first year in 1999. If you were to ask OU fans, like, hey, what are just, 3 to 5 of the best home games over the past 25 years? 2000 Nebraska, 1-2. 2008 at home against Texas Tech. That was a top 5 matchup. Notre Dame came in here in 2012, and then Ohio State came in here in 2016. That was big time. You just haven't had a whole lot of big-time showcase games because you play Texas every single year in Dallas, and let's face it, you've been in the Big 12. There's only so big an Iowa State game or a Baylor game or a TCU. Like, there's only so big that those games can get, right? But this is Tennessee coming to town. This is your former national championship quarterback coming to town. The last guy that's won a national championship, who was the offensive coordinator, who got fired as the offensive coordinator by his head coach. The storylines here, your first ever SEC game. 7 of your 12 games you played last year were at 11 a.m. It's a night game on Saturday. We're not used to night games around here. We love night games. This is incredible. There's not very many times, and OU's a blue blood program, and they've done a lot of special things, but there's not a whole lot of times in the past 25 years, and they've done a lot of winning in that time, where you can say, hey, the game in Norman this weekend is the best college football game of the weekend. Not that many times where an OU home game has been the case. That's the case on this Saturday. The entire country is going to be watching, and the entire country is going to be watching to see if you're quote unquote SEC ready, right? I mean, Heupel coming. I mean, it's incredible. And I even made the statement on Twitter last night, like sight unseen. If OU was to win this game on Saturday, with everything that's going into this game, it immediately is in the upper tier of home games to ever be played in Norman, Oklahoma. That's how crazy the atmosphere is going to be. That's how big this win would be over Josh Heupel, your first SEC game. Chase, it's actually hard to put into words just how big this home game is because, man, I mean, it's just massive, man. The team that you're playing, the kickoff time, game day, everything going into it. I mean, you've been feeling it. It's Wednesday, and we're feeling it this week on Monday. It's a huge game, and outside that, I think this game is probably going to heavily dictate, good or bad, what the rest of your season looks like.
Yeah, I'm curious as well, just to follow up to that with Josh Heupel. What do the Oklahoma fans feel about Josh Heupel? Obviously, you mentioned he was quarterback, led the team to a championship, was on staff, got fired. Like, what is the Oklahoma faithful? How do they feel about Josh Heupel?
So our conversation this week, and I don't know the answer to it, will they do some sort of a tribute video? Will you do a tip of the cap to him? Because that 2000 season was just magical. I mean, they were barely in the top 25 to start the year, and they just had the magical run that season, beat Florida State in the Orange Bowl. I mean, it's still one of the most beloved seasons in OU history, and he was the centerpiece of that as the quarterback. Bob Stoops has said he's the most important recruit that he's ever gotten. Bob Stoops has also said it was the most difficult day in his coaching career when he had to fire the guy. Overall, for the fan base, it's love, man. It is still today. I think he's going to get an extremely warm reception. I know that there's some hard feelings on his side of things, and I can't necessarily blame him for that. But from the OU side of things, man, it's all love. He'll get a warm reception. Everyone, to my knowledge, still roots for Josh Heupel and roots hard for him. Everyone loved to see him beat Alabama a couple of years ago and make that run to the Orange Bowl. So, yeah, man, all love for Josh Heupel, as there should be. He's your last national championship quarterback, and he did a lot for this program.
Tyler, my last one. Give me your pick in this one and why.
So nationally, it's kind of funny, and even locally here, it's not if OU is going to win the game or not. Is OU going to cover the 7 on their home field? Because there's not a lot of people that believe, especially nationally, that OU is going to win this game. And I mean, to be fair, if you watch just the two teams play in the first 3 weeks, I wouldn't blame anyone for thinking that. But for all the reasons that I've already stated about the defense, I think this is going to be a close game. I think OU is going to force Nico into maybe some early mistakes and cause this Tennessee offense, which has just been rolling through everyone, to face a little bit of adversity, right? I think it's going to be a close game with 5 minutes left, but ultimately I just think it's the inefficiencies on OU's offense that is ultimately going to get Tennessee a win. I've got Tennessee by a field goal. I think it's going to be an excellent game, but I'm just not comfortable enough right now with where OU's at offensively to pick them to win a game of this magnitude. So I think it's a close game. I think it's a great game, but give me the Vols by 3. In what I think will be way more of a lower scoring game than what Tennessee has played, certainly, and probably what they're going to play throughout the remainder of the year. Something like a 27-24 kind of in that range is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I could definitely see that as well. You can hear Tyler McComas out in Oklahoma on the Ref afternoons there on the Rush. Tyler, great to talk with you again. Appreciate you coming on with us, and enjoy that game Saturday night and that atmosphere there in Norman.
We even got tailgating. We're not used to great tailgating either, so it's a whole new world around here. But anytime, guys, always fun.
That was Tyler McComas with KREF Radio out in Norman, Oklahoma. As he has a great pulse on the Oklahoma fan base, a football program right now heading into this big matchup with the Tennessee Volunteers. And, hey, we'll be along to react to that game and all the rest of them right here on this channel coming up Saturday night. So subscribe if you have not already, and you can catch that coming up Saturday night with our reaction that we do every Saturday night. Before we get out of here today, Chris, got to get to some likely or unlikely. Love doing this every week. We'll throw a scenario out at each other and see what the other one thinks. So I'll go first, Chris. Here's a scenario: likely or unlikely. Billy Napier is the head coach for Florida for the remainder of the season.
For the remainder of the season. Now, I mean, there's a little bit of me that if this were a different era, I could see them letting him finish out the season. That's not the era we're in transfer portal time, all the things you got to get ahead of, NIL, having boosters excited about that. It just seems unlikely to me.
Do you think, though, because I'm having a hard time with this one because part of me can see, yeah, they pull the plug early, and part of me, lets him ride out the rest of the season because it's not like you're going to be able to hire a coach in October. So I can't figure this one out. I really can't.
Well, look, we can kind of dance around the all we can't things we can't figure out, but I'll pose it to you. Maybe this will give you some clarity. Is letting a coach finish out the season with all the things that need to be done when he's unpopular coming into the season and he starts the season 1-2 with more losses to come? Does it feel like a thing where a big time SEC program would make the move or not make the move?
Probably make the move, I guess.
And that's where I settle.
Yeah. Yeah. Understandably. So we'll see. I mean, some folks were saying it could have been as early as this past Saturday night after the loss to Texas A&M. Obviously, he's still the head coach. They got Mississippi State this weekend. We'll see what happens, but definitely things are looking tough in Gainesville. All right, what's a likely or unlikely scenario you got, Chris?
Missouri going 11-1. The Tigers are 3-0. They start SEC play this weekend as a 21-point favorite over Vanderbilt. And you look at the remaining schedule, I could argue that some of it's gotten a little tougher, some of it's gotten a little easier. But we talked about how this team had the most advantageous schedule in the conference at home. Now, it does still have 4 road games to play. But are you buying Missouri at 11-1?
11-1. I got their schedule pulled up here. Let's see. They've got Vandy, A&M, UMass, Auburn, Alabama, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. This is tough. I'm gonna. Man, this is really tough. I think they lose to Alabama. I think they lose in Tuscaloosa. I feel like Oklahoma's a toss-up. I think South Carolina's tough. Auburn, perhaps. I'm going to say unlikely. I think they drop Auburn or South Carolina along with Alabama.
I feel like that I think 10-2 is the right answer, but just for kicks, I've run the predictor model I've got against the rest of their games to see what the lines would be. And right now it's right with the Vanderbilt game. They've got that right with the Vegas line. It's 21.5. So pretty close. The Texas A&M game, that's on the road. This has got Missouri favored by about a point. UMass game at UMass, Missouri favored by 37.5 by my model. Auburn in Columbia, Missouri should be about a 10-point favorite there. Alabama, I've got them a 13-point dog. Oklahoma, about a 5-point favorite. At South Carolina, about a 7.5-point favorite. At Mississippi State, about 16.5. And Arkansas and Columbia to end the regular season, 12.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4 times the Tigers are double-digit favorites. One time they're an underdog. Actually, 5 if you include Auburn as a double-digit favorite. Rounding up, it's technically 9.8. But that's the landscape. The close games on paper look like at Alabama, Oklahoma, at South Carolina, and at A&M.
Yeah, that's interesting though. That'll be that's a good question. That's tough. It's hard to know what they'll do, but I feel like 10-2 is a good safe bet on Missouri. All right, likely or unlikely, Chris? South Carolina gets to 6 wins, gets a bowl game.
Ooh, let's see. What do we got coming up? Akron is going to be win number 3 this weekend. And boy, then it gets tough. Ole Miss at Alabama at Oklahoma. I can't see them going any better than 1-2, and that feels a little optimistic. A&M in Columbia, man, I don't know. At Vandy, I feel like they get that one, but that's not gonna be. I think they're about a 4.5-point favorite, maybe a 7.5-point favorite. Now that I look at it, yeah, Missouri. I feel like that's going to be tough, but not impossible. Okay, let me clear this up. Okay, here's the wins: Wofford and Akron. That gets you to what, 4?
Yep.
Then you got to get 2 out of Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Oklahoma, A&M, Missouri, at Clemson. Give them Vandy and get one more somewhere else. Yeah, Phil, that's kind of like the Shane Beamer thing to do, is get somebody when they're not catching it. They've dominated the Vandy series. I'll give them 6. I don't know that I'll give them any more. Want to see how Lenore Sellers' health goes.
Right. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think they get to 6. I really do. I think they'll pull one out somewhere. Beyond 6, it's tough for me to go. Maybe 7 if they get hot. I don't see them. But I think 6 is a good number, I feel like, for South Carolina.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to give you mine, and it's a 2-part question. Georgia goes 10-2 in the regular season.
10-2. Likely.
Okay. And this is what's interesting. The same predictor model I've used all year, which I think had Georgia favored in every game. Chase, the numbers have shifted on all the teams. As of this morning, we're doing this Wednesday, what is it, September the 18th. Georgia's a 5-point underdog in this model I put together. The odds makers have already established Georgia's a 2.5-point favorite a week out. That could have some movement because of health and God knows what else. Although I don't know how much movement we'll have unless you have a practice injury, because each team's got a week off. But I found that interesting. They are now a 4.5-point underdog is Georgia at Texas. And get this, a 1-point underdog at Ole Miss. And in addition to that, just a 4-point favorite at home against Tennessee. So I remember you asked me a question, some permutation of this a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of laughed you off. I don't know that I should be laughing anymore. I think the model has now got them losing 3 games straight up, although one's by 1 point. But again, you got that Tennessee game looking awfully tough no matter where it is. It happens to be in Athens. But I think the numbers on Georgia have gotten very interesting.
I think so too. And with those 4 games, Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee, I feel like Georgia, I mean, obviously they need to win at least 2 of those. To me, I feel like they need to win 3 of those. But yeah, I mean, I think they do lose 2 games, because I think it's going to be hard to win all 4 of those. I think it's going to be hard to win 3 of those. But I do think they win 2 of those. I really do.
Okay, part B. Let's say Georgia loses 3 of these games, and let's say it is at Alabama, at Texas, at Ole Miss, teams that I think we pretty solidly feel like are in the playoff field right now. And let me make it a little more interesting. Let's say these are all a field goal less losses. Maybe you get sniped on the last play of the game. Does 9-3 Georgia make the college football playoff? Because you will have beaten Clemson on a neutral field. You'll have taken down Auburn for whatever that's worth, and just give them Tennessee for the sake of saying they're favorites, who will give them that. What does the committee do? Because I have a hard time thinking that Georgia, and I know it's not the best 12 teams in the country, right? You got your conference champions and all that, but it feels like a 12-team playoff without Georgia is not including the championship level teams. Maybe that's projecting. We don't know what the Bulldogs are yet, but I think it is shaping into a fascinating what if.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with what the other. Let's say Tennessee beats Georgia by a field goal. Well, is Tennessee, have they lost? Maybe they lose to Alabama, in a close one. Well, then certainly, in Texas, maybe they go unbeaten and, they beat Georgia. then yeah, as long as the teams that beat Georgia don't just have some other really bad loss and they don't make the playoffs. If Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee beat Georgia, they're all three in the college football playoff, then yes, Georgia, I think, will certainly be in the playoff because they will definitely be one of the top teams in the country, especially if those are all close games. I do think they'll take a 3-loss Georgia if it's close losses to those three and if they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, right now, 5 of the top 6 teams in the SEC or in the country, according to computers, are in the SEC. Georgia's 1, and you're playing the other 4 right here. So
yeah,
potentially playing the top 4 teams in the country, not named Georgia.
Yeah, that was a good one. That got me thinking. This is going to be fun. It's going to be really fun. We got you covered here on Southeastern 16. We do this show every week, the SEC Football Hour, but we've got prediction videos that we roll out every week. We've got reaction that we do Saturday night. We've got other videos we put in all throughout the week. So hit the subscribe button if you haven't already here on the video. Hit the like button on this video. Share with your friends. Spread the word about Southeastern 16. We got you covered with SEC football, but not only football, basketball and baseball as well. We're inching closer to basketball season. You'll be starting to see season previews for basketball rolling out as well. We do a weekly show for basketball and baseball here on the channel as well. So be sure to check out all of our great content. We'll be back with you next week. Remember, check out the live reaction show coming up Saturday night. We'll be on 9:30 or so after the big Tennessee-Oklahoma game to put a wrap on the Saturday. So check us out there. We're on YouTube, also on podcasts as well. You can catch it. We are Southeastern 16. That's Chris Lee. I'm Chase Robinson, and we're brought to you by BetOnline.